Erik Erikson, born in the year 1902 and passing away in the year 1994, was one of the most important figures in post-Freudian psychoanalysis. He developed his psychosocial theory, or in other words, the eight ages of man. He asserted that throughout an individual's lifetime, he faces certain developmental crises. He faces certain challenges to himself, from childhood to old age. He must resolve the conflict between opposing forces or opposing drives. He either acquires specific ego virtues if successful in reconciling or acquiring new characteristics depending on how successfully he deals with these conflicting drives, or he suffers psychic damage as a result. There's some defect within his self. The stages are as follows. There is the first stage in early infancy, basic trust versus basic mistrust, which leads to successful resolution, leading to hope. Then there is autonomy versus shame and doubt in later infancy, leading to will. Then there is initiative versus guilt in early childhood, preschool, leading to purpose. Then there is industry versus inferiority in middle childhood, leading to competence. Identity versus role confusion in puberty and adolescence, leading to fidelity. Intimacy versus isolation in young adulthood, leading to love. Generativity, creativeness, so to speak, versus stagnation, static sort of state where one does not achieve a lot of progress per se in life or a lot of change, in mature adulthood, leading to care. And ego integrity versus despair in late childhood, leading to wisdom. Now, there's obviously a lot of other specific aspects and nuances that come with this theory, but one important detail that is suggested by this is that an individual throughout his lifetime will experience a kind of conflict between different forces in his life. He will experience opposing drives within himself. And these conflicts come as developmental crises within an individual's lifetime at multiple stages. And he either learns to reconcile between these and attain new characteristics and new ego virtues, or he suffers psychic damage. It's really interesting then to note the parallels between the development of certain civilizations and societies and the development of the individual himself, where they both face different ages or different eras, so to speak, within their lifetimes. They develop different characteristics, they go through age of crises. But more importantly, they have periods where they rise, periods where they stagnate, and periods where they fall into decadence, so to speak. And this parallel between the individual and civilization is really interesting. I pointed this out in one of my earliest videos where I mentioned that this whole thing or phenomena that's been pointed out by historians like Ibn Khaldun of civilizations rising, stagnating, and falling into decadence can also be applied to an individual. Furthermore, individuals are often forced to take paradigm shifts in their fundamental assumptions about the world. And this is very similar to what a lot of civilizations and societies have to go through, where when fundamental assumptions of their worldview are challenged, no matter how many centuries or no matter how long the process takes, a gradual shift in their worldview and their founding mythology, so to speak, takes shape. And so the parallels between the development of civilizations and the development of individuals is really interesting. If we are to take Erikson's word for it, then individuals throughout their lifetimes will face certain crises, right? So before these crises, they may be experiencing rise, progress, change, whatever you may want to call it. And then during these crises, oftentimes the forces of stagnation may arise, where a conflict between one or more of these driving forces causes a developmental issue within the person. And this can ultimately lead to decadence and even self-destruction if he is unable to reconcile between the two. Once he is able to successfully reconcile the two, a fundamental paradigm shift occurs within the person. His fundamental assumptions about the world change, and he develops new characteristics, new ego virtues upon which to operate and upon which to evaluate his own experiences. This individual now adopts new characteristics. He essentially reorganizes himself based on his experiences and approaches the world with a new paradigm in a new manner. Just as how in an age of crises that a civilization faces, as Dr. Carol Quigley puts it, due to a fundamental conflict within that civilization has to reorganize itself and approach the world with new assumptions, not necessarily throwing out all of the old assumptions, but at the very least refining them or adopting new assumptions, or throwing out old assumptions that aren't as useful, reorganizing that civilization and adopting new fundamental characteristics. That parallel between the age of crises and reorganization that a civilization goes through and the age of crises and reorganization that an individual goes through, so hence these developmental crises and the response to these by both the civilization and the individual, this parallel between the two is really interesting. What it suggests is that human civilizations in their development are very similar, or they reflect how humans develop or how humans approach and respond in relation to certain developmental crises of their own. The individual reflects the collective whole in that sense.